Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Very welcome to this degree ceremony, conferring ceremony, which is always a very important event in the life of the EUI. I would be very grateful before proceeding if you could switch off your mobile phones. And also, you may find some headsets on your chairs. This is not providing a translation, but it's just meant to hear the voices of the people who speak a bit more clearer in some areas of the church. So now I'm very pleased to invite President of the EUI, Professor Renaud de Hoes, for his welcome address.
Dear graduates, dear families and friends, dear colleagues, welcome to the 2018 conferring ceremony of the European University Institute. Today is a special day. It is a special day for you, graduates, who will experience in a few moments the crowning of years of patient efforts and probably of one of the most ambitious projects to date, at least in your existence. It is a special day for your family, who have had to accept your years of self-imposed exclusion and who have wholeheartedly supported you throughout this period. And if you allow me to say so, it's also an important day for us too. For any educational institution, there is no greater satisfaction than the achievements of its students. We are well placed to appreciate what it takes to arrive to where you are now. Today we are here to celebrate your success. This is, of course, a source of legitimate pride for yourself and for your family too, but also for us. From the outset, we have bet on your potential. We have invested in you, and with good reasons, since you're here today. More than ever, we sincerely believe in your ability to accomplish great things. Let me take advantage of your presence here to make two last remarks before we part ways. All of us here have had the privilege of receiving a lengthy education. We should never forget that this is not a given to everyone. And for this reason, this privilege imposes upon us a number of responsibilities. Firstly, a responsibility of intellectual honesty. Having been trained in the critical examination of discourses, theories, and concepts, we must put to good use the skills that we have acquired. In the words of Ralph Dahrendorf, our fundamental responsibility is to doubt all received wisdom, to wonder at all that is taken for granted, to question all authority, and to pose all those questions that otherwise no one dares to ask. Needless to say, in today's world, where fake news and intolerance have been gaining ground, these crucial skills will be readily and constantly put to test. Next comes a duty of solidarity. Solidarity with those who have not been given the same opportunities to learn. But also solidarity with those whose ability to enjoy the same kind of privileges we have received is threatened. In that respect, I'm very pleased to welcome today Professor Michael Ignatieff, Rector of the Central European University. Over the last 2 years, we all have noted with great concern the pressures to which this first-class institution, to which we are proud to be united by so many bonds, has been exposed. 1 year ago, on this very occasion, one of your predecessors very eloquently expressed the solidarity of the entire EUI community with our friends at CEU. Today, as I speak, it is still far from clear whether CEU will be able to operate freely in the future. Let me therefore repeat that as countless universities and associations of higher education have declared in recent months, autonomy and academic freedom are indispensable to enable universities to flourish and play their role in society. This institute will continue to resolutely stand by CEU, as I'm sure you all will, wherever you will be. And I now give the floor to Rector Ignatieff, who will provide the keynote address of this conferring ceremony.
It's an honor to be here. Hi there. We welcome all generations. I want to thank Rector de Hoos for these not just kind words, but extremely important one. If you're fighting a battle to stay in a European capital, it means a tremendous amount for me personally to stand in this beautiful sacred space and hear you reaffirm the support of this institution for mine. The two institutions have deep ties. We're both European institutions in the heart of Europe. We're devoted to graduate training in the social sciences and humanities. CEU has been under attack for a year, and you've been clear in your support, along with institutions around the world. You've been there for us, we will be there for you if, God forbid, anyone is so foolish as to attack this great institution. We're united in our defense of academic freedom, and I wanted to do something slightly unusual. It's a temptation of somebody when you get to my age to pontificate to bright young people. You just can't resist the temptation to give them a bit of advice. I wanted to talk about freedom, since the issue at the core of our debate or difficulties in Budapest are about academic freedom. I wanted to share some rather personal thoughts about what it means to be a free person. It's directed to my left and to my right and behind to the wonderful graduates of this institution. I've done a lot of things in my life. I've been a professor, I've been a politician, a journalist, I've been a writer. The most important thing I've been has been to be a father, a husband, and I hope a good friend to my friends. And now I'm a university president, and from this you'll rightly conclude that this guy needs to settle down and find a career. But don't worry, I'm not going to settle down, it's too late. And I urge the graduates here today, never settle down. What I want to say is that I've learned that the hardest thing in the world, and this is really my theme, the hardest thing in the world is to think for yourself. This is especially true about the life choices that you're going to make in your late 20s as you graduate. It's not hard to live the life your parents want you to lead. It's much harder to live the life you want to lead, especially when you don't actually know what your path should be, and especially when your parents seem to know so much better than you do. I loved my parents. I was very fond of my mother and father, but I did know right in the heart of me that this was my life to live, not theirs. I had to own it, which meant I had to think about what I wanted for myself. I had many rich and valuable friendships in my life, but you don't live your life for your friends, and you don't have to think like them. One of the most sophisticated arts in life is to agree to disagree with those you love, to agree to disagree with those you're bounded to by friendship, to maintain loving friendships across deep disagreements of philosophy and attitude to life. So first, independence from your parents, then independence from your friend, and in my case, it was also a battle to achieve independence from my professors. You're in the presence of those who have taught you today. Mine were at Harvard, and they were terrifying figures, and I often, when I was in my 20s, had to struggle to keep my footing. They had so much authority, I doubted my own. We all need to feel the force of intellectual authority, and there's plenty of intellectual authority at EUI. And every one of you, I hope, has come to learn to respect intellectual authority, and to seek, by respecting authority, to in time become an authority in your own field. But if that's the objective, to become an authority in your own field, you also need to learn to question authority respectfully but stubbornly on the basis of evidence, on the basis of a conviction that there's something that the authorities are saying that just doesn't fit with the evidence as you know it. So the fundamental challenge of an academic life is to respect intellectual authority without surrendering the sovereignty of your own judgment, and always listening to that little voice inside you that says, this doesn't fit with the facts. And then there's something else that it seems to me has to be resisted in the life of the mind, and that's the tyranny of fashion. There are fashions in intellectual life as there are in clothes. I've decided to be resolutely out of fashion for the rest of my life, and that seems to be working for me. But the fashions in intellectual life are not always a good thing. When I look back over my own intellectual training, there was Marxism, there was structuralism, there was constructivism, there was deconstructivism, there was post-colonialism, there was a thing called subaltern studies, there was critical feminism. I've lost count of all the waves of fashion that have swept through academic life in my time, influencing generations for good and ill. But I now look back at this stage of my life and I notice the extent to which these fashions were ephemeral. They seemed oppositional, they seemed progressive at the time, and now they've decayed into orthodoxies and they've retired disgruntled into the museum of discarded concepts. Don't misunderstand me. You can't understand anything without concepts and theories. I hope you've learned some wonderful, enhancing, insightful theories while you've been here, but they always simultaneously enable and disable. They allow you to see some realities while concealing others. And theory has sociological effects, especially the current fashion craze for big data and data analytics. These are wonderful tools, but when you use them and when you use the theories that go with them, you embrace certain jargon. You embrace a lexicon of concepts. You embrace a technology that's reserved for initiates. And this jargon and the new data technologies create a caste, a tribe of the all-knowing, who then have the power to exclude those who don't speak the same language. And the dangers of exclusion are obvious, but less obvious are the costs to yourself. You slough off the burdens of thinking lonely thoughts on your own. A free life has to struggle free of jargon. It has to struggle free of fashion. It should be about trying hand over hand, day after day, up the wall to get to the place where you finally have a thought you can call your own. I can say in a intellectual life that was pretty productive and that I've deeply enjoyed, I could number the thoughts that I could generally call my own on the fingers of one hand. I don't even mean an original thought, a contribution to scholarship. I just mean a thought that was my own, something that I saw after close attention to the world and that I saw through my own eyes and helped me to orientate the world or orientate myself in the world in a new way. It's a wonderful moment to think that you've seen something, that you've experienced it all the way down into your inner core, and that you feel you understand it on your own terms for yourself. And this moment of exhilaration is not a monopoly of those of us on the platform. It's not a monopoly of geniuses and experts and specialists and people with doctorates. Every human being is capable of it. We're all capable of seeing the world for ourselves, free of illusions, fashions, ideologies, and partisanship, and embrace the world in all its perplexing wonder. But what it takes is discipline. It's a word we use in academic life, and I like it very much. We teach a discipline, we follow a discipline, we are trained in a discipline. And then there's the meaning of this word discipline that I'm looking for, the discipline of seeing, of feeling, of knowing for yourself. The other disciplines, the academic disciplines, mine happen to be history, can help you. They can help you to that moment of personal insight, but that's their purpose, not to close you off in orthodoxy, but to help you see the world anew. From the discipline of history, I learned the deep path dependency of life, the ways in which the apparently illogical and irrational can be understood by knowing what came before. History made me aware that what we often attribute to deep necessity may be better explained by contingency and accident. And once we do that, once we rediscover the power of contingency and accident, we discover fatefully human agency and human responsibility. For your generation, the burdens of thinking for yourself are no harder and no easier than they were for mine. You have information at your fingertips that I had to use to search for deep down in the stacks. It was difficult then to sort the dubious from the reliable, the true from the false, and it's difficult now. One thing I would say, and I am coming to a conclusion, is to beware of false historicization. The belief that your own times are so new, so unprecedented, so difficult that nothing in the past can compare for help. If history teaches us anything, it is that we historicize too much. Yes, we're polarized today, but there was polarization just as extreme when I was 21 years old. The challenge remains the same, to see the world for yourself, not as extremes of left and right would want you to see it, nor even complacently, this is the liberal vice, to believe that wisdom always lies in the middle between the extremes. So my advice in conclusion is a piece of radical, intransigent, unapologetic individualism. You're on your own. What your parents, your friends, your intellectual authorities say you must listen to, you can listen to them, but you must chart your own intellectual path. You must be smart enough to learn from people who know better than you. You must respect what you feel is entitled to respect, but make yourself the judge. Throw away intellectual fashions. Forget about left and right. Jettison partisanship. Don't throw away your convictions. Don't throw away your righteous anger. And always remember that cynicism is not wisdom. It's just cleverness masking disillusion. Never abandon the discipline of trying to find out what you think. Simple rules apply. Facts are hard to establish, but they're the basis of just about everything. Pay attention to that discrepancy, that nagging doubt, that uncertainty that leads you to suspect a theory, a commonplace opinion, any certainty that passes for common wisdom in the tribe. Put your own eyes on the target. See for yourself. Shut the book. Put away the article. Shut the computer down. Leave your phone at home. Go out there and see for yourself. And perhaps most important of all, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to be wrong. Don't be afraid to be in the minority. Stick up for what you believe. And perhaps this sounds a bit grim or earnest, but let me just try and say again, finally, I don't mean to be grim or earnest. Some of the happiest moments in my life have come when I felt I knew that something was true. And because of that I'd managed to put granite under my feet. And when you have that feeling, you can take on the world, because at least for a moment, thanks to science, thanks to knowledge, thanks to research, you've made yourself, if only for a moment, at home in the world. Good luck.
We will proceed with the awarding of the honoris causa degrees, and I invite Honorary Promoter Anton Hemerek to address Honorary Dr. Kathleen Thielen.
Dear Dr. Thielen, dear Kathy, after President Renaud de Hoos approached you to inquire whether you would be willing to accept an honorary doctorate from the European University Institute, you sent me an email asking whether I was somehow behind all this. I replied to you that somehow was indeed the appropriate adverb to describe the nonlinear causal reality of decision-making in the EUI SPS department. Since you received your first honorary doctorate from the Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam in October 2013, with me delivering the laudatio as the Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences, of course, you had every right to be suspicious, and so did your husband. In hindsight, I would proudly add that the Vrije Universiteit recognized you before LSE and the EUI, before your monograph, Varieties of Liberalization and a New Politics of Social Solidarity, received the Barrington Moore Best Book Award of the American Sociological Association, and before you became president of the American Political Science Association. I reiterate that even in Amsterdam, I was only somehow behind all this, but extremely happy with the unanimous decision reached by the four heads of the departments that made up the faculty at the time to nominate an intellectual comrade in arms. As social science academics, we live in a reality where numerous causes come together to produce multiple effects. And somehow, the SPS department, as a microcosm of the social world, is no different. And there were a number of somehows in play. And I will give you just one example when it came to deciding who should read the laudatio today. We could have followed the logic of the economics department last year when Michel Belot offered the degree of Doctor Honoris Causa to Claudia Golden. On this score, it would have been most appropriate for a female colleague who has worked closely with you in the past to deliver the address. That could have been Professor Ellen Immergut, who in fact contributed to your edited volume with former EUI professor Sven Steinmo, entitled Structure in Politics, Historical Institutionalism and Comparative Analysis, a book that to this day is considered as one of the defining works in the field of comparative political institutional analysis. But there was yet another causal somehow at play in the department, a somehow that determined, for reasons of early 21st century gender balance, that a female honorary doctorate should be presented by a male counterpart. The deeper meaning of what I'm trying to convey here with all these somehows is that in our overdetermined social world, trying to understand and explain the extent to which somehow causes and consequences are linked really is, in all humility, the appropriate social science research question, and this par excellence. And more to the point, the search for the institutional somehow, I believe, aptly captures the groundbreaking force of your truly innovative contributions to the social sciences over the past quarter century. The use of the somehow adverb in your email was no slip of the send key, but reflects a deep, humane understanding of your role as a social scientist with genuine respect for the object of study, the messy world of policy and politics. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Thielen, Ford Professor of Political Science at MIT, has made a deep and lasting impact on at least 4 fields of political science research and teaching: comparative politics, political economy, historical political analysis, and last but not least, theories of institutional change. She has been at the intellectual forefront of bringing institutions into the heart of social science inquiry as resilient variables in explaining political compromise and contestation, policy continuity and change, and comparative and economic and social performance. Professor Thielen's empirical work focuses on the origins and evolution of political economic institutions in the rich democracies, with a special interest for skill systems, the cornerstone of any advanced political economy. In part, thanks to her work, policymakers, since the onslaught of the Great Recessions, are relearning and reappreciating a fundamental social science insight handed down to us from Max Weber, that robust social and political, domestic and supranational institutions are a sine qua non for securing the benefits of global economic interdependence and democratic legitimacy. Professor Thielen's academic work is steeped in the variety of capitalism approach to the understanding of comparative economic performance, popularized by the Harvard political scientist Peter Hall and the Oxford economist David Soskes, now at LSE. Her work is distinct from theirs due to an innovative twist that raises the quality of her work beyond the contributions of these founding fathers. With her explicit focus on middle-range mechanisms of change and continuity, Kathy Thielen has been successfully able to steer institutional analysis away from the cul-de-sac of bipolar overdetermination, somewhat inherent in the original variety of capitalism perspective, which distinguishes too rigidly between what are known as liberal Anglo-Saxon market economists versus coordinated or Rhineland ones. 2 contributions really stand out. One is explicitly theoretical, and the other, more implicit, is methodological. Theoretically, over the past decade, Professor Thielen, working together with James Mahoney and Wolfgang Streeck, among others, has broken new grounds in explaining evolutionary modes of institutional change that are incremental and transformative at the same time. This novel dynamic perspective on institutional change that characterizes much of contemporary economic, social, and political life departs in important ways from the traditional punctuated equilibrium models of change, which originally brought historical political institutional analysis into the social science limelight 3 decades ago. We live in a world of path-dependent solutions, but not predetermined scripts. Institutions deeply anchored in societal relations, state structures, and policy legacies are by no means invariable. Structural reform is in the order of the day, but on the other hand, we hardly observe truly radical overhauls of the institutional status quo in rich democracies, although the social aftershocks of the global financial crisis continue to produce political surprises each and every day. For Professor Kathy Thielen, institutions are open, rife with ambiguities, multiple layers, and competing logics. In her prize-winning volume, How Institutions Evolve, the Political Economy of Skills in Germany, Britain, the United States, and Japan, which won the 2005 Woodrow Wilson Foundation Award of EPSA and the 2006 Mattei Dogen Award for the Society for Comparative Research, she already underscored how much dynamism goes on behind apparently stable institutions. Maintaining institutions in a changing world is hard work, and oftentimes deep conflicts with oppositional actors putting in different directions are looming behind what on the outside looks like stasis. From a personal point of view, the theoretical breakthrough Kathleen Thielen ventured to resolve this apparent paradox of simultaneous institutional continuity and change has greatly influenced my own work on the comparative study of welfare states. Indeed, we see how over time, subtle changes across interdependent policy areas, incremental reforms that hardly show up on the radar screen, may cumulatively alter the overarching welfare policy mix in a gradual but indeed deeply transformative fashion. Living in a world of path-dependent consequences, there is no denying the importance to actors of the institutional incentives and constraints presented by the institutional environment in which they live. And while environmental changes alter the functioning of existing institutions, they also modify the interests and preferences of relevant political actors and their relative power positions to reinforce or enforce their objectives in various directions. Any understanding of institutional change, therefore, has to be actor-centered, as gradual but transformative change does not take place in a political vacuum. Even rule structures that we generally consider as set in stone are, on close observation, open to actor reinterpretation. Take the example of the Maastricht Treaty, an agreement that anchored price stability of the ECB. Then compare it with the enormous stretch in the reimagination of the ECB's fight inflation mandate put into effect under Mario Draghi. The wording of the rules have not changed, but judging from the bank's behavior, somehow the ECB certainly has. This brings me to Professor Thielen's more implicit and less manifest, but equally important methodological contribution to our understanding of institutional change. Her use of process tracing in a recent article about how countries have differently responded to regulating Uber reminds me of the highly effective and deceptive simplicity of her method, a method that she also put to use in her book, Varieties of Liberalization, The New Politics of Social Solidarity, when she asked, can distinctive varieties of welfare capitalism embedding unique and treasured institutions of equity survive by proactive institutional re-engineering in an increasingly interdependent world economy? Yes, indeed, somehow, is Thielen's answer. When an institutionalist frames a puzzle like this, the first thing she does is to look for elementary data, often longitudinal and quantitative ones, for illustrative statistics that kind of trace recent socioeconomic trends. But then plotting several variables together can help her to not only delineate certain elements in the systems, but also how they are connected. The reasoning here is that the institutional researcher somehow assumes that long-term patterns provide clues to the workings of the underlying rule structure. The next step is to link these rule structures to privileged actors who are pulling the strings. And when you start with observable patterns of change, your inquiry immediately leads to dynamic and not static analysis. Not only, for example, whatever went wrong in the Netherlands in the 1970s, or Germany in the 1980s, or Italy in the 2000s, but also, and more importantly, to how they ended up in dire conditions, and given the available institutional structures and policy legacies, what the scope conditions are for institutional reform, provided that relevant actors have sufficient interest in changing the status quo. Extremely important and somewhat counterintuitive is that while constructing initial puzzle on the basis of changing inputs and outcomes, what economists call revealed preferences, Kathy Thielen resists the easy temptation of immediately probing theoretical beliefs and assumptions, because this would almost inevitably produce careless, incomplete, and therefore ultimately quite useless hypotheses. Hold your hypothetical horses is perhaps her most astute methodological advice, learning about the history of the puzzle on the basis of readily available data, and then employing grounded knowledge through archival research, and next, interview key actors who've been around long enough to tell us what really happened, while acknowledging that people's memories are not always reliable, is the way forward to understanding the comparative politics of policy reform. The future can't be predicted, but institutionalists who often look backward are much better than economists in envisioning what lies ahead. To this day, I continue to be awed by how Fritz Scharf, another SPS honorary doctorate, envisioned as early as 1986 the substantive fundaments of the Maastricht Treaty, the mandate of the ECB, the Growth and Stability Pact, and his prophecy that the next major economic crisis would be a financial one. How did he do that? By historically laying bare, from the late 1970s on, the limits of Keynesian full employment strategies in an age of capital mobility in his classic book, Crisis and Choice in European Social Democracy. Let's face it, the economic, social, and political worlds are messy, and that dynamic interactions create equilibria as much as diversity and turbulence. We live in a world of path-dependent but not predetermined solutions, and this harbors consequences for us as academics. We should be humble in the first place, and like Professor Kathy Thielen, honor and respect the nonlinear complexity of the social world we study, expand our time horizons, pay attention to what is institutionally relevant with a strong focus on responsible actors and accountability structures, and not simply go for what is easily quantifiable. Finally, we should be modest and acknowledge that we can only really master sometimes true theories somehow. Dear Kathy, for over a quarter century, you have been at the forefront of the comparative study of rich democracies, underlying the importance of institutions, rules, ideas, and interests that somehow enable policy actors and citizens to pursue treasured, normative, and interest-based objectives. Your path-shifting theoretical work on evolutionary models of institutional change is increasingly put to use by scholars, including by our own researchers here at EUI, to explain today's transformations in economic, social, and political life. In the SPS department, we sincerely hope that your honorary doctorate will contribute to even more mutually rewarding and flourishing collaborations between the EUI and you, MIT, and many other scholars that on occasion traverse the Tuscan hills above Florence and cross over the Boston Bay area. Hereby, I present Kathleen Thielen for admission to the honorary degree of Doctor of the European University Institute.
I just want to thank Anton for that generous and, I would say, comprehensive laudatio. I also want to thank President Eus and my colleagues and the graduate students for this incredible honor. The EUI is such a vibrant and important institution. This place and the many people who have passed through this place over the years, some of whom were mentioned by Anton, have simply played an enormous role in my intellectual development. One of the things that I've learned over the course of my career is that scholarship is a deeply collective effort. And so I know you can't give honorary degrees to communities, so you have to give them to individuals, but I have to say that whatever successes I have enjoyed over my career have really had a lot to do with the incredible good fortune that I have had to be surrounded by really brilliant but also very generous scholars. And they helped me really at every step of the way. So from my perspective, what is so utterly distinctive and so precious about the EUI is the way that it embodies and really supports this ever-evolving community of scholars across different countries and indeed also across, of course, different generations. And so it's for those reasons that I'm just especially touched to be now somehow permanently associated with this remarkable institution. Thank you.
Professor Thielen, by the authority vested in me, I admit you to the honorary degree of Doctor of the European University Institute.
I now invite Honorary Promoter Lucy Ryle to address the Honorary Dr. Jürgen Osterhammel.
Thank you very much. So let me start saying what a pleasure it is to give the laudation for Jürgen Osterhammel this afternoon here at the European University Institute. He is the Emeritus Professor of Modern History at the University of Constance in Germany, where he is also Director of the Leibniz Program in Global Processes. I should start by saying that I find it hard to think of anyone more deserving of the honorary doctorate in history here at the European University Institute than Professor Osterhammel. And it's my job today, in just 10 minutes, to explain why I think that's the case. Professor Osterhammel is a scholar of modern China, of Asian-European relations, of colonialism and decolonization, and of 19th century global history. In all, taking a rough count, he has written some 12 books and numerous other co-authored and edited books and scholarly articles. Some of these, as some of you will know, are very big books. Perhaps his most famous book, certainly in the English language, The Transformation of the World, published in English in 2014, came in at 1,167 pages. And some of his books are much shorter. A book he published on colonialism in 1990 was just over 140 pages. So his books come in different sizes. As you can tell, however, from the title, A Global History of the 19th Century, The Transformation of the World, or Colonialism, none of his books shy away from big subjects. All are based on careful, what he calls responsible research, and none of them are confined to one particular field. Jürgen Osterhammel was born in northwestern Germany in the 1950s, at a time when the Second World War was still very much a living and alive memory. And although the bulk of his work has been on non-European subjects, Europe and the European project has played a strong role in his career and I think the kind of history that he writes. Following undergraduate studies at the University of Marburg, he experienced what he described, these are his words, as a revulsion against a kind of narrow Germanocentrism in the curriculum at Marburg, and went to London to study for a year at the London School of Economics. He returned to London in the early 1980s to take up a fellowship at the German Historical Institute, before coming home to Germany to teach at the University of Freiburg, the Open University in Hagen, and the University of Constance. Thus, Jürgen Osterhammel belongs to one of the first generations of historians who can be described as truly European. And this is the first reason why I consider him the perfect candidate for an honorary doctorate in history here. Even though, and I call him truly European as a historian, even though he himself is not a historian or primarily a historian of Europe. It is no coincidence, in my view, that he attended the LSE, the London School of Economics, at roughly the same time as the European University Institute was being set up here in San Domenico. It's part of the same European project, or that his time at the LSE coincided with the directorship of Ralph Dahrendorf, another European German who's already been mentioned this afternoon. Professor Osterhammel's time in London also reminds us of a time when the United Kingdom had its face turned towards the European continent rather than away, as today. And I mention this fact not simply to bemoan Brexit, although I could, but also to suggest that Jürgen Osterhammel's university career shows the best that European universities have to offer. Because I would suggest that London left traces or its mark on Professor Osterhammel as a historian, not simply in terms of his interest in empire, in the British Empire and in international relations, but perhaps particularly and less obviously in his use of what we might call an English narrative form of historical writing. What do I mean by that? Alongside the extraordinary erudition, the intimidating erudition that Osterhammel brings to his work, which we might call typically German, he also has the gift, for gift I think it is, of combining theoretically sophisticated and carefully researched analysis with clear, elegant, accessible prose. He wears his considerable, as I say, intimidating knowledge lightly with what we might call an English style. And in recognition of this talent for writing, of this narrative style, he was, in 2014, awarded the Sigmund Freud Prize, which is specially awarded in recognition of excellence in the academic style in history. More recently, he has become an important essayist, publishing numerous essays in journals and newspapers, a public figure who looks at contemporary global problems from a historical perspective. He is, of course, as many of you will know by now, and he may be tired of hearing, Angela Merkel's favorite historian. She read his book, The Transformation of the World, seemingly in 2013, while recovering from a skiing accident. And she invited him to her 60th birthday party to give a lecture. Only in Germany, Professor Osterhammel remarked this morning, would a politician oblige her colleagues to listen to a 50-minute lecture by a historian. He is also a recipient of the Leibniz Prize, arguably Germany's most prestigious academic prize, to exceptional scientists and academics for their outstanding achievements in the field of research. But let's get back to history. Professor Osterhammel's scholarly achievements are far too many to do justice to in the time that I'm allowed here, but I would like to mention a couple of things, a couple of particular qualities. First, I would like to mention his work on China. At a time, the 1970s, 1980s, when few historians were writing and even less were publishing about China, you may remember, some of you, that Japan was all the rage in those days, Jürgen Osterhammel brought the subject of China to our attention. His PhD and later book was about economic relations between Britain and China in the 1920s and 1930s, and he looked particularly at the activity of British firms in Shanghai and elsewhere. He stressed, and this was the real insight for us as historians, the importance of business imperialism as a very separate, independent form of the political imperialism that most of us were familiar with. In other words, he stressed imperialism as a kind of capillary phenomenon which permeated all kinds of different spheres, rather than as a single monolithic project which historians were used to dealing with before then. More recently, he has looked at the encounter between 18th century Enlightenment thinkers in Europe and Asia, stressing Europe's fascination with Asia and the cosmopolitanism of European attitudes. So this is in fact a very optimistic, positive book. And he argues that only recently, or only with the growing nationalism of the 19th century, did Eurocentrism change and diminish European fascination with Asia. But in particular, before closing and before passing over to the ceremony of graduation, I want to mention the book that I mentioned at the outset, this large 1,167 pages book, The Transformation in the World, first published in German in 2009 and translated into countless languages. This is history, on the one hand, on a vast scale, but it's also history on several different scales, small, medium, and large. It focuses on time, the history of time, the history of space, the history of factors of production and forms of knowledge. It moves from general considerations. One chapter asks, when was the 19th century? To discussions of the city and the frontier, two very important aspects of the 19th century. To trade, the middle classes, living standards, and anti-Semitism. Professor Osterhammel takes readers to Delhi and Shanghai, to Berlin and Buenos Aires, to San Francisco, London, and Vienna. It is a history with Europe and also the United States at its center, but it is a history which is never Eurocentric, and it is history that never fears to challenge accepted wisdoms about the process of globalization and Europe's role in it. Thus, the transformation of the world is both history in the grand sense, as well as being something smaller and more valuable. It is a series of carefully researched, small analyses that together make up a larger synthesis. It is history from the bottom up, rather than history from the top down. And for those of you who want to copy Angela Merkel and read it on a holiday or after the holiday has ended, Professor Osterhammel has some advice. The chapters of the book, he writes, are meant to hang together as a coherent whole, but they may also be read separately. Once readers have entered the book, they should not worry. They will easily find an emergency exit. Professor Osterhammel told us in the meeting this morning that he had with history researchers that he has always led a provincial life and that he finds that an enormous advantage as a global historian. I would add that a great advantage for a global historian is the importance of modesty, which Professor Osterhammel, I think, shows so well for all of us. It's such a good example for all of us scholars. And I stress this because this does not take away from the fact that he is a truly important historian, perhaps the historian, the first historian of the 21st century, whose work has radically changed our perspective on the past and made a deep impression on the way we study history. To know all there is to know is not the key qualification of the world historian, he tells us. Two other qualities are the truly important ones. First, to have a feel for proportions, contradictions, and connections. And second, to maintain a humble attitude of deference towards professional research. A world history, he goes on, that reproduces long refuted legends with a pontifical sweep of the hand is nothing short of ridiculous. As a synthesis of syntheses, as the story of everything, it would be crude and tiresome. I present Jürgen Osterhammer for admission to the honorary degree of Doctor of the European University Institute. Thank you.
Dear President Dues, dear Professor Ryle, dear graduates, ladies and gentlemen, one does not normally receive Christmas presents via email. This one arrived on the 20th of December amid the usual flood of institutional and routinized greetings at that time of the year. It took me a little while to realize that that particular mail was serious business. Still, the subject line honoris causa degree seemed to indicate a request for an evaluation or for participation in the selection committee. But no, this time it was much more dramatic. The message referred to me. I want to express my warmest thanks to everyone involved in the decision to award me this tremendous honor, and to Lucy Ryle for her laudation. I can assure you that this is a kind of sustainable gratitude and joy. My bewilderment and surprise are as great as they were on the 20th of December 2017. Some Veralltäglichung, one gets used to almost everything, will sooner or later set in. But this degree will always remain emotionally charged. And since on tactfully selected occasions one is allowed, at least in Germany, to insert it into one's name and address, it will visibly last. Let me recall my shy relationship with the Institute, both distant and close. I visited for the first time in 1995 on the invitation of Professor Kirti Chowdhury, a few years later for a lecture. Then I returned for doctoral defenses in 2004 and 2015. Friends of mine taught at EUI, PhD candidates and postdocs from Konstanz went there, and I recruited one of my closest collaborators from Fiesole. But I never applied for a position myself, and I didn't even spend a longer period of time as a visiting scholar. Thus, EUI has been on my mental map for decades, a kind of peripheral fixture viewed in admiration from afar. This is why I speak of a shy relationship. EUI is such a unique place, such an impressive success story. It stands for what has always been important to me, academically and politically, the unity and variety of Europe and its place in the wider world. I'm far from suggesting that I deserve this outstanding honor, but I suspect certain elective affinities between me and EUI. One is a penchant for comparison, which makes it a special pleasure that I have the privilege to share this podium today with the great comparatist Catherine Thielen. A second point to mention is my closeness to the systematic social sciences, at least as long as they retain a residual interest in long and medium-term processes. And thirdly, EUI and I seem to have in common a relaxed attitude towards national history. Since I was not trained in national history, I later did not have to go through a transnational repudiation of my past and a painful conversion to globality. All these approaches have their merits. I have practiced them all, and I'm a dogmatic believer in none of them. This, to me, also seems to be the spirit of this house. Finally, a word on the city. These days, Florence has a special meaning for me. I'm currently working on Jakob Burckhardt as a world historian, And Burckhardt, of course, is the author of some of the most luminous pages ever written on Florence. When I return to the Burckhardt materials on my desk tomorrow, I feel a slightly tighter bond between the great man and me than before. Thank you very much again for your great appreciation.
By the authority vested in me, I admit you to the honorary degree of Doctor of the European University Institute. Congratulations.
There is a musical interlude now, and we will listen to the EUI choir, which is directed by Valerio Del Piccolo. Here they are. And they will bring two pieces. The first piece is Dieu qui l'a fait bon regarder, de Claude Debussy, and the next number is Verger from Paul Hindemith. We will now proceed with the awards of the doctoral degrees and start with the doctoral degrees in History and Civilization. Can I ask you to stand up, please?
By the authority vested in me, I admit you to the degree of Doctor of History and Civilization.
Dorit Maria Nicola Brixius.
Congratulations.
Brice Kozar.
Congratulations.
Koen Dokter.
Congratulations. Well done.
Itzea Goikolea Amiano.
Congratulations.
Annelie Grosse. Johannes Christian Huhtinen.
Congratulations.
Mikkel Munte Jensen.
Congratulations.
Bruno Kaminski.
Bravo.
Maria Cavadia. Ivan Obadic.
Congratulations.
Alexandra Katrien Ortalia Bert. Paskalis Pechlivanis. Frank Paulsen. Dieter Reinisch. And Waltraud Schutz. Now the doctoral degrees in economics. Can I ask you to stand up, please?
By the authority vested in me, I admit you to the degree of Doctor of Economics.
Bryce Alvarez Pereira. Ciao. Anastasia Anzigina. Nicolás Aragón. Omar Bamie. Christina Bluestein. Dario Bonciani. Anthony Italo de Moraga Sanchez. Gabriel Alejandro Facchini Palma. Congrats. Joanna Franacek. Hey, congrats. Gabriella Liliana Galassi. Hey, congrats. Ignacio González Garcia. Congratulations. Robert Goodhead. Congratulations. Benedict Mario Kolb. Andresa Lagerborg. Francesca Loria. Lucas Meyer. Christoph Pitka. Fabian Schutze. And John Vurdas. Doctoral degrees in law. Can I ask you to stand up, please?
By the authority vested in me, I admit you to the degree of Doctor of Laws.
Sarah Helene Andersen. Felipe Brito Bastos. Federica Coppola. Federico Della Negra. Haukur Logi Karlsson. Betul Kash. Vivian Kube. Guillaume Landais. Marlene Michel Lozia. Frank McNamara. Sophie Christine Müller. Przemysław Palka. Argyri Panesi. Zane Rasnacha. Maria José Schmidt-Kessen. Theodosia Stravulaki. Katarzyna Marita Schroeder. Juha Tuovinen. Marinus Jacobus van den Brink. Marijn van der Sluis. Chin Huwei Wu. Doctor degrees in Political and Social Sciences. Can I ask you to stand up, please?
By the authority vested in me, I admit you to the degree of Doctor of Political and Social Sciences.
Francisco Guillermo Alonso Norma. Albert Alcarons. Macarena Ares Abalde. Lars Erik Berntsen. Fabio Bulfone. Tiago André Casalda Silva. Andrea De Angelis. João Tiago do Alabareda. Nisida Jokski. Alexi Gugusvili. Sarah Marika Hemelainen. Anne-Christine Holtmann. Despina Karamperidou. Anna Kiriasi. Martin Neil Lestra. Nina Elisabeth Liljeqvist. Ludwig Lundstedt. Juan Masulo Jiménez. Congrats. Michal Maciej Matlak. Jeroen Gerardus Moes. Didem Oral. Irene Palacios. Lorenzo Piccoli. Hey. Giulia Rone. Niels Selling. Alexandre Serrault. Mila Emilia Vaha. Mathilde Maria van Ditmars. Katharina Veronika Wolf. Tomasz Paweł Wojnakowski. Margarita Zawadzkaja. Finally, the master degrees in comparative European and international law. Can I ask you to stand up, please?
By the authority vested in me, I admit you to the degree of Master of Laws.
Sonia Arisa Navarrete. Thea Sveen. And Zeynep Timotsin Chantekin. Now we will move to the annual prizes awarded for the best thesis, which happens on an annual basis in a number of disciplines. And I would ask Martin Scheinin, Dean of Graduate Studies, to come forward.
This year we will award 4 prizes for the best PhD thesis, either in a department or in a more specific field. A prize at the EUI is an acknowledgement that the recipient's PhD thesis is more than excellent, namely exceptional. Before I invite onto the stage the recipients of the prizes, please allow me to say some words to these individuals, to the graduates, and to all members of the EUI community, including researchers, professors, and everyone else. We are privileged to work at the EUI and to live in Florence and Tuscany. There is so much beauty and culture around us, and the EUI itself is a stellar academic institution. We must not allow all this to tempt us to feeling entitled or arrogant. Rather, we should be humbled by what we can see and enjoy around us here, particularly at a time when the world may appear to be falling apart. Robert F. Kennedy, who was tragically assassinated exactly 50 years ago, could have been speaking to this audience of today when he said in January 1967, in the aftermath of the great flood of the Arno, "Florence is an enemy to pride, because it recounts one of the most powerful and constant lessons of history. The mastery of transient events, our accomplishments and victories will ultimately matter less than what we contribute to the liberation of the human spirit." Kennedy referred to destruction and tragedy, to millions murdered by cold insanity and to rage in slaughter, and then remarked that while we must admit to cruelty and injustice, we can also point to Florence and say, this is also our work. Let me now invite to stage the following 3 individuals who are among the recipients of this year's thesis prizes. From the Department of Economics, Andresa Lagerborg. From the Department of Political and Social Sciences, Juan Masullo Jimenez. And from the Department of Law, Zane Rasnacha. The fourth recipient. The fourth recipient, Chloe Cabero de Carondelet, from the Department of History and Civilization, could not be with us here today. She is a Spanish national. Her PhD thesis on art, piety, and conflict in early modern Spain, the religious and artistic patronage of Cardinal Bernardo de Sandoval between Toledo and Rome, is awarded with the James Kay Memorial Prize for the best thesis in history and visuality. The prize is given for the best PhD thesis that combines the study of historical and visual sources. And it was created to commemorate the lasting memory of our alumnus, James Kay, who in 2011 perished in an accident on the same river Arno to which Robert Kennedy was alluding. The Wilfredo Pareto Prize for the best doctoral thesis in economics was established by our Department of Economics to honor Wilfredo Pareto, the sociologist, economist, political scientist, and philosopher who lived here in Florence at an important stage in his life. The 2018 Wilfredo Pareto Prize is awarded to Andresa Lagerborg, who is Swedish and Brazilian, for her thesis Essays in Macroeconomics, Confidence, Business Cycles, and Fertility. This thesis, presented in the form of a collection of papers for publication, deals to a significant extent with school shootings in the United States, a phenomenon that, in Kennedy's words, would be murder in cold insanity and rage in slaughter. Lagerborg demonstrates that rather than with economic factors such as unemployment in the area, school shootings correlated with earlier mass shootings and hence appear to be a copycat phenomenon. Correlations were, however, found between school shootings and subsequent negative developments in the local economy, such as lower consumer confidence and higher unemployment. The value of her scholarship has been recognized through publication in top journals. This year, we will be awarding the Linz-Rockan Prize in Political Sociology to Juan Masullo Jimenez, who is a national of Colombia and Argentina. His thesis, A Theory of Civilian Non-Cooperation with Armed Groups, Civilian Agency and Self-Protection in the Colombian Civil War, relates to another dimension of destruction and violence and to the capacity of human beings to maintain the agency of a free human spirit, even in the midst of a civil war. The thesis makes original empirical and theoretical contributions by studying nonviolent resistance in the Civil War of Colombia. It is honored with the Linz-Rockan Prize, which was created in memory of the two great scholars, Stein Rockan and Juan Linz. The Mauro Capelletti Prize for the best thesis in comparative law is named after the great Italian scholar who served as professor both at the EUI and at the University of Florence. This year, the prize is awarded to Zane Rasnacha for her thesis First or One Among Equals, the Court of Justice of the European Union and the Construction of EU Social Policy. It provides exceptionally high-level comparative insights and theories concerning the EU Court's understanding of its own role and relationship with both national and EU lawmakers. The author is a national of Latvia. Her thesis serves as testimony to the fact that also in an area such as social policy, and in times of centrifugal and even destructive tendencies, the conflicting aims and actions by EU member states and other actors are nevertheless bound together into a civilization. Congratulations. Please receive your prizes.
Finally, I'm very pleased to call Dr. Andrea Lagerberg back to the pulpit for her final salute.
Okay. Dear Mr. President, dear professors, dear families, and my dear friends, when I was asked to give this salute, I knew it was both a great honor and a great challenge. An honor because it presents an opportunity to congratulate my fellow colleagues and thank the institution that has given us so much. A challenge because how could I possibly describe almost 6 years at the EUI in just a few words? Thus, allow me to be brief in my recount of the PhD experience. Reaching the endpoint provides us with perspective to remember the starting point and reflect upon the journey. At the very beginning, I remember the moment when I bought a pencil case just before starting the PhD. I had been working for a few years and had forgotten what it meant to be a student. I was about to embark upon a year of intense coursework and exams, followed by years of solitude in writing a thesis. What had I signed up for? Was I out of my mind? But I, and we all in fact, took that first step on the staircase, and perhaps despite a few setbacks along the way, we finally made it up to the top. In hindsight, it would be untrue to say my fear was unfounded. So I will not say that. The PhD has been a very long journey with many challenges. There were times of feeling lost, frustrated, unproductive. There were research ideas thrown away, and meetings with professors and presentations that did feel discouraging. However, it is also in part because of these challenges that it has been an extremely gratifying experience. And in all honesty, I couldn't imagine a better place to do my PhD for many reasons. Its small size that offers a family community feeling, the unparalleled support received from professors, and its values, with a focus on promoting cultural exchange for a more united and peaceful Europe. As Martin Luther King once said, people fail to get along because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other, and they don't know each other because they haven't communicated with each other. For this reason, the EUI is a very special place where researchers from diverse academic backgrounds and nationalities come together to learn, debate, and communicate. Among us, we have researchers from 4 academic fields, which I will depict by quoting great minds from the Renaissance. Dante, justice does not descend from its own pinnacle. These are the lawyers. Machiavelli, I'm not interested in preserving the status quo, I want to overthrow it. These are the political scientists. Caterina di Medici, history is written by the survivors. These are the historians. And Galileo, to understand the universe, you must understand the language in which it's written, the language of mathematics. These are the economists. Many centuries later, here we are living and learning together, studying these 4 interdependent subject matters, which are considered to be of particular interest for the development of Europe. However, life is a collection of moments, and so is the EUI experience, which has been much more than simply studying. So let me list some memories of mine lived on this campus that hopefully many of you can relate to. Reading a paper in the Villa Gardens on a sunny day, inspiring lectures and conversations, everlasting friendships across the world, parties in fiasco until late morning, victories and defeats in Coppa Pavone, more of the former when playing with the Hurricanes, the emotion of handing in your thesis, your parents' emotion when you defend your thesis, because they've been wondering for a long time when you would finally finish, and the opportunity to live in the beautiful city of Florence, which implies having 1 million visitors, but with each one being reminded of the privilege that it is to live here, over delicious food and wine, the historical references around every corner, the gardens of Bardini, and watching the sunset in Piazzale Michelangelo. These are just a few of the memories that I will forever carry with me. But in every chapter in life has to come to an end sometime, and with every ending, there's also a new beginning. So now, after these incredible years in Fiesole, we are some years older and hopefully wiser. Although, as Voltaire once said, the more I read, the more I acquire, the more certain I am that I know nothing. By contrast, Leonardo da Vinci believed the knowledge of all things is possible. So whether you feel you know more or you know less, as we embark upon our diverging journeys ahead, settling in new countries and constructing new lives, something very special and common to us all is the experience that we have shared here. So let me take a moment to thank the EUI for granting us this opportunity. Thank you also to the professors for their guidance and patience in all that they have taught us. A special thanks as well to the administration for their support in making all of this possible. And last but not least, I take the opportunity to thank all my friends and colleagues for their great memories and wish good luck to all of you. As the Italian saying goes, in bocca al lupo.
Well, we made it almost on time, and I don't want to take much more of your time, but I just want to add a small footnote to what's just been said very eloquently by Andressa. This, dear graduates, marks the end of your Florence days, but it's not the end of your EUI days. Wherever you will go, we expect you to bring a little of the many things that you have gathered here. And we just heard that they were not all of a scholarly nature, and that's how it should be. We expect you to be our ambassadors in the various countries you will be in, because we know that we couldn't dream of better ambassadors. And you should know, in return, that your accomplishments to come, which will be manifold, this we know, we will follow with great pride, as I said. And we think it is important for all of us to stay in touch and find ways to get together at regular intervals, be it here or wherever you will be. So this is not an end, but just one more stage in our partnership. In the meantime, I invite you to celebrate this with drinks outside of this beautiful place. Thank you, everyone, for your patience.
This ceremony has indeed come to an end, but just some logistic matters. So, according to the tradition, the doctors leave the church first, followed by the professors. So I would like to ask you to just remain seated for a while. And then, as Professor De Hoes said, there will be an aperitivo on the church square. So having said that, thank you very much for your attendance, and I wish you all a pleasant afternoon and a fantastic June ball.